you can see that I have a board demonstrating the side of a board and its warp pattern. It's very important to understand that we're using a living material, or something that once had life in it. We're using a tree that has been cut down and planed into a board that is usable for our purposes here. And I've indicated the grain here on the wood. It's essential and very, very important to understand, as you will see from an icon where this was not done, that the grain of the wood be going in this direction, so that the heart of the wood is here, the heart of the tree is here, and we're going to be painting into the heart of that wood. We've dug out this section here. No matter what you do, I'm going to show you different methods of bracing to help work against that natural warping of the board, but no matter what you do, your board is going to warp. So we want to work against that warp so that your painting is not destroyed in the process. And if you don't follow some of these rules that we're going to be learning in this class, you're going to have unfortunate things that will happen even to very beautiful icons. This was an icon brought from Europe that is literally falling apart, and it's not more than 20 years old. Whereas an icon that is properly prepared, hopefully according to some of the standards that we're going to establish here in this class, this will not happen if the board is properly prepared. But you can see here that the selection of the wood as well as its placement here was done improperly, and now this section of the board is warping up this way rather than this way, and your gesso, the material underneath the painting, is literally just cracking off the board because it cannot move with the warp going up this way. Whereas when your warp is going this way, your gesso can move with that, especially being attached to the linen, as we will show. So after we have properly determined what direction the warp of our, what direction our grain is going in, and here you can see on this board the heart of the tree was probably over here somewhere, but nevertheless the warp pattern is going this way, so we're going to paint on this section of the board. This is the top of it. Now there are different ways of preparing your board. In this instance you can see that we used one solid piece of wood, which is fine for a smaller icon. But now for a larger icon, and especially in days in the past when they didn't have available the kind of machinery that we have nowadays, it wasn't possible to get large pieces of planed wood, so that it was most practical to use smaller pieces of wood that had been planed down and then braced together. Now in this first example that I have here, the brace made out of wood. We don't want to use anything in the selection of wood. We want to be careful about what kind of wood we're going to use. Just to give you an example, poplar, linden, willow, bay, whitewood. These are all acceptable woods for painting and writing an icon, as well as birch, maple, oak, alder. Those woods are a little bit harder. We're going to be using only hand tools. We don't use electrical tools in this process in order that we can make it a human effort that is being given over to God as a gift. And when you're working with these harder woods, it's a little bit harder to work with hand tools. So you might have a preference for some of these woods that are a little softer, but you want to be very, very careful to avoid any woods that are resinous, such like pine and fir. They are never acceptable for an icon, and you'll have problems much worse than the icon that we showed you of St. Peter and Paul. Also, I come from an area where we have redwood readily available to us, and although that is not a traditional wood that icons have been painted on, it is very acceptable because it's an extremely stable wood. And that's what we're looking for, is the stability of the wood that a fir or spruce or pine board is not going to have. It's going to react too much to the elements around it. Okay, so these braces also need to be made out of wood, and preferably if you've used a softer wood for your slats here, you want to use something harder like birch, maple, oak, or alder for your braces, because it's often been misconstrued that some students will think, well, if I want to brace my wood against warping, why not use something like some metal rods? And this has been experimented with. Well, by using metal or something that's completely foreign to your wood element, your board will in fact not warp. It'll just crack and all fall apart. So we want to extend the life of this icon as much as possible. This whole process that we're going to be teaching is to enable the board to have a long life, as if to express the eternity of God and of heaven that is being realized in these icons.